We were away with very, very good performance, very good result, but the last match against Manchester City was completely different. And obviously, we didn't play like we want, but I think now Manchester City is better than us. And tomorrow as well, Arsenal could be better than us, but we are playing at home. And at home, we have to show our best performance.
16 low blocks we have faced this season. So we have won a lot of those games. We have merit at the end of the game to win most of those games. But then it's about the efficiency. You know, when they block everything and the ball doesn't go in the net, it's great. If you win 2-0, then you attack the low block really, really well. So always is going to depend the assessment there. There are always things that we have to improve, and our efficiency in the boxes is not been as good as it was when we were football matches. And tomorrow it will have to be really high to beat them.
So, Farah, where will those Arsenal players' heads be right now? It was deflation, really, in the stadium, wasn't it? You could see it from the fans at the full-time whistle. 1 point from a possible 9 in the Premier League, and obviously, you know, they've lost 3 out of the last 4 if you include that FA Cup game as well. They had an 8-point lead a month ago.
I know, crazy to think that, you know, I think everybody thought that they might, if they can go on a good run away with it. But I think it will... If I was in the Arsenal dressing room, it shows the level where they're at. So they are trying to develop and grow and win the league, and they're obviously competing for the Premier League. But I think when you come up against, you know, a Manchester City team that have done it 3 seasons on the bounce, they know how to win. As I mentioned, I think that experience really did show in that game. I think you could see, and it started from the back. You could see. I mean, here's a mistake here, you know, in Tomiyasu, and then De Bruyne scoring. This was when momentum was with Arsenal, so they shifted the whole momentum there. But I just think Arsenal were trying to build probably where City are. If you look at the both teams, they play pretty similar. I think Arteta's learned a lot from Pep, but I think they can take confidence in. And as I said, you know, they created those chances. They just wasn't clinical in front of goal, and the difference between the 2 teams was that City in front of goal were a lot better. But they are. I think they have a lot to learn. I think some of their players, Martinelli in particular, I think, you know, the World Cup hindered him. I think he went to the World Cup full of confidence, in great form. I think having not played the minutes that he would have liked to in the World Cup, he's come back and he just can't get himself into a, you know, a run of form. And maybe the signing of Trossard, you know, mentally has put a little bit of a distraction in his head. So is it something that Arteta needs to look at and freshen up, because Trossard's looked good when he's come into the game, and you know, we saw Nketiah as well. He went in that form of scoring goals, and now he's just, you know, last week we've seen against Brentford, he's just lashing out in front of goal. We've seen the 2 big misses at Man City. That he, you know, on another day if he scores them, completely different game. So yeah, lots of positives, but yeah, I still think they're that little bit behind where City are. And
interesting that Mikel Arteta, Sam, after the game, sort of really tried to lift everyone in that Arsenal dressing room. And, you know, in his post-match interview, said that I'm more convinced now we can win the title, given what I saw, particularly in that first half. Do you believe him?
No. It was interesting you said particularly in the first half, because you were talking about the positives from the game. I thought they weren't as good in the second half in terms of the domination, but what I really liked from an Arsenal point of view was, OK, Zinchenko, he gave that ball away and Haaland had that chance. And some of the fans in the ground, next time they went to play short, they were like, oh, get rid of it, get rid of it. But like, that's what took them to the top of the league. Yeah. And they carried on doing it. And that's where they got their chances from. Like, that's when Nketiah was getting in for those chances. They played through them so well. It's not a counter-attack, but it looks like it. They can, if they draw a team in, as good as City, play through them, and then you've got space to run into with people like Saka, you're on to a winner. So in terms of particularly the first half, I thought even the second half, they were doing that really well. And if you've got that personality to play, even in difficult circumstances, and even at 2-1 down, it kind of bodes well for going to Villa, because you're going to have to do it there as well. And if they can stick with it, then I kind of see what Arteta's getting at in terms of I'm more convinced, because, OK, the result didn't go that way, but they did play well.
But I think that's where they showed their naivety, because when you look at Edison and Manchester City, who have dominated playing out from the back since Pep's been in charge, so Man City, we know how they like to play. There was times where Gabriel wasn't looking, and you've got Ramsdale rolling him the ball out. They're the moments you might want to play out, and that's fine, because that's the way that Arteta and Arsenal have been so good at this season. But you've got to wait for your players to be set. You can't just roll a blind ball out because you want to play quickly. I think that's what caught them out of the weekend. And then obviously then players on the back foot and then making mistakes. So they were forced themselves into their own errors because they wanted to play a certain way all the time and quickly without any kind of thought behind it. Whereas I say Edison, he takes control at the back. He knows when he has to go long maybe or miss players out. Arsenal haven't quite got that balance yet.
I'm really interested, and I mentioned that, the psychological impact before, but given that people have been saying this all season, that Arsenal have been so consistent, and even during the Invincible season, they drew 12 games, Arsenal. You very rarely see across a Premier League season someone just winning games, unbeaten. This is the first dip they've had, right? So it's how they react to that. City, who we'll get onto later, they've had 4 or 5 dips already. And what will those players be thinking when it's that's being now called into question, that this is the first slump and you've got to get out of it?
I feel like you talk about when Liverpool won the league, when Man City, they know, and when Chelsea in the past, they know that blip is going to come at some point. As you say, it's very rare against the top teams. You can go a whole season like the Arsenal Invincibles did. So, but I just don't feel like this Arsenal team are prepared for that. So when the momentum's great and things are going well for them, the confidence in the young players, I think that helps to build that. A few setbacks, and then the pressure starts to build externally, not so much internally, but externally. And I feel like those young players aren't or haven't been in those positions to then deal with that and overcome it as easy as the likes of Manchester City. When they're not playing well, they've got big players that know how to win in big games, and they showed that on Wednesday night. And
the big games to come for Arsenal, Manchester City, they play Newcastle and Liverpool, but all away from home, and City have got those games at home. What about Unai Emery and the fact that he is a former Arsenal manager, and the way that it ended, and the motivation that he'll have, Sam, on Saturday morning?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure personally he'll probably be a bit bitter about how it ended. I think he gave interviews along those lines once he left and went back to Spain. But I mean, other than that, I'm not sure how much it actually means to the players. He'll be motivated, but all he can do is prepare them in the best way. All he can do with his staff is sit and analyse where he thinks his team can exploit the other team. And there's not a lot else you can really do. Do you remember when Gerrard was Villa manager and went to City on the last day of last season, and everyone was like, oh, because he was at Liverpool, blah, blah, blah. What can you really do to...
But it's a narrative probably that Arsenal don't want or don't need,
It's
isn't
a narrative,
at this stage?
but I think it's more of a narrative for us guys. I'm not sure for the players on the pitch. You must have been through something similar. Like, have you ever had it where a manager's been harshly treated by a former club or something, and do you run through brick walls for him, or do you just do what you need to do?
Yeah, I think you do what you normally do. I think it is more for Emery himself, wanting to go back and prove a point, and he will obviously set the team up for that upset. But they've done what, and under Emery, they're organised. They like to press high, so they could potentially, and because it being an early kick-off, and Arsenal playing midweek, and coming off the back of a defeat, it could work in Villa's hands. But yeah,
and he's also got the fact that when he was Villarreal manager, he knocked them out of the Europa League, so he will be fired up for this. There's also those questions. I mean, I know we're talking about Villa there, but with Arsenal, because Martinelli, who was flying at the beginning of the season, there's maybe a question that he might drop to the bench and Trossard comes in. Ben White as well. Does he come back into the team after that Tomiyasu mistake? There's some big selections to be made in this game.
I was surprised about the Ben White, Tomiyasu. I thought Ben White would I think he's been great for Arsenal. I think playing. We know him as a centre half to play and really adopt that full-back position and do so well. And I think him and Saka certainly have got that connection down that side. So I was surprised that he didn't play. And it's a simple replacement. I'm not. Tomiyasu in big moments. That mistake cost Arsenal heavily. Yeah. I think it certainly shifted the momentum in terms of how the game went, because for large periods Arsenal were on top and creating much more chances than Manchester City. I'm sitting between two City people, so I'm quite scared.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
The momentum is when you win 10 games in a row. It didn't happen this season. So we lost 3 games ago. We lost in London against Tottenham. So momentum is tomorrow at 3. Be ready mentally, and a team just lost 1 game in the last 6. Beaten important games at home with the crowd, with the managers. Respect a lot what they have done for English football.
Sam, momentum is huge in the Premier League, isn't it, and in football, and Manchester City just seem defiant at the moment. It's not often they have to chase, but they've chased very well and they've hung in there, and now it's about leading, isn't it? Look, even if Arsenal go and get the job done before, they can go back to the top, City.
Yeah, it's a funny one, because obviously he was asked then, can you build momentum now on the back of this? But he was like, look, momentum's when you win 10 games in a row, City not being able to do it. And he did mention that Tottenham game, which I mentioned before. And that's the thing with City now. It does look like this is the big boy City. The City from the last few years, where they just go, OK, we're going to go win 15 games.
You think they can do that?
No, but it looks like it. But we don't know. This is the thing with inconsistency. And Guardiola was talking about complacency, and Gundogan was talking about complacency before. They've said that's got better recently. And obviously with the Arsenal result, it looks like they're going on an upward trajectory. But then if they were to lose to Forest or They've got Bournemouth next weekend. They've got Newcastle in a couple of weeks. If they were to drop points there, you think, OK, they haven't really got over it. We don't know yet which way it's going to go. Like, there's no guarantee that, like, unlike the old City, that they're just going on a run now. They might not. You know, they're overcoming those issues that they had, like, off the pitch. You know, the kind of reasons why João Cancelo has gone to Bayern Munich with no replacement, because it was like, right, we just need to fix this problem. But then what they need to do then is just go back to what they had before the World Cup, which is fitting Haaland into the team and making everything as fluid. Now, the interesting thing as well, when we were talking about Arsenal, 1 point from 9 and all these things, is how it compares to City and Liverpool in the last few years. But maybe it goes back to title races like we had up until 2017, where teams just drop points. Like, when City and Liverpool have been going at it in the last few years, whoever's won the league has not dropped any points, basically, in the run-in. They've just gone for it. But you think, that's not normal. Maybe it goes back this year. Maybe City do drop points in the next few games, and Arsenal drop points again tomorrow, and it just keeps going on. And we get to April, and they're dropping points left, right and centre. But somebody's still got to win the league. Maybe this year it's not that ultra effort where somebody gets 100 points. Maybe this year it is like 85.
Yeah.
But then it just comes down to who holds their nerve. And then do you bring Man United into the conversation? Possibly. But yeah, City, it looks good right now. But I am very wary of going, oh yeah, they'll be fine now, just because all season they've not had that consistency, and there's no guarantees that they will do now, but they do look much better.
Here are the fixtures for the weekend. 8 games on Saturday, some big and juicy ones in there. Everton looking to bounce back against Leeds United, that are still looking for a new manager. A big game for the league leaders. Manchester City, can they consolidate their position at the top of the table? A little London derby between Tottenham and West Ham, and the leaders Manchester City against Nottingham Forest. And of course, we have to talk about Arsenal at some point. Are they letting the pressure get to them? That is the question. We're going to go on the road now to meet Io. Where exactly are you, buddy?
Yeah, currently in Nottingham at the moment, and obviously Nottingham Forest play Manchester City this weekend. The team that are now top of the league, which is a bit sad for me to hear, but it is the way it is at this moment in time. Look, Arsenal haven't won, a game in the last 3 Premier League matches, and actually even losing that FA Cup one against Man City not too long ago. I think, you know, the momentum's kind of slipped off.
Io, is it the manner of the defence? Obviously, Manchester City, there's no shame in losing against Manchester City, especially because there was positives to take from that Arsenal performance. But is it more worrying in the manner in which, you know, you lost against Everton and then perhaps drew against Brentford in a game where you could have been a couple of goals down in that game as well?
I mean, look, the Brentford one's tricky because we have a bit of an issue with the technology. I'm not saying any more than that. But at the same time, Everton as well. Look, who wants to play a team who've literally just got a brand new manager? Everton lost their match straight after that. So it was just a tricky one. I think at the end of the day, you basically want to look at it and go, if we are a title-winning team, or if Arsenal is looking to win the title, none of these things should really matter. They should be dominating and whatnot. We've got to also remember this is still a really young team. And, you know, I was looking at an Instagram post that Bukayo Saka put up after the Manchester City match, and he's like, keep believing. If you're an Arsenal fan, you've got to keep believing. You've got to hope that these boys are going to pull through at some point and keep the momentum going.
I love how I is speaking into existence. I love that. I love that. I want to talk about the goals against City, though. The goals at the City game. Like obviously, Tomiyasu made a huge mistake, and then Kevin De Bruyne, the finish is just sublime. But it's a tight game, though, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the thing is, look, it was 1-1 going into half-time, and you're thinking, OK, Arsenal might have a little something here, because Bukayo Saka was completely marked out of that game, but still stepped up. And as you can see here, tucked away that absolutely wonderful penalty, cool, calm and collected. And then it just started unravelling. I think one of the things that really bothered us as Arsenal fans was that Manchester City have this guy, they have Haaland. On the other side, we had Nketiah, who's had actually a really, really good season so far, as Gabriel Jesus has obviously been injured. But the quality of Haaland versus the quality of Nketiah. Haaland seems to take those chances. Nketiah had 2 or 3 good clear-cut chances in that match and just couldn't bury them. And I think really it was the quality that showed for Manchester City, wasn't it?
I was just going to say that, Io, because let's be fair to Tomiyasu, right? That was actually only a mistake, because Kevin De Bruyne was on the end of it. It just wouldn't have been a goal otherwise. I think he's the one player in the Premier League that takes that and makes that a chance, thus making it a mistake.
For sure, for sure. Ayo,
No,
thank you so much,
you're
man.
absolutely spot on. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
You guys.
So that, bud.
Guys, Villa is up next for Arsenal, and Liv's been finding out how well a couple of North London teammates know each other.
Shut down.